Hello indie game fans, people have varying definitions of action RPGs, where I have a selection of third-person, platformer and isometric variants for 2022, including Heroine Anthem 02, Skill Scars Oath, an awesome underrated title from a Taiwanese developer with some pretty good action and a very anime look. Not all of these are fantastic, but I've included games which are at least interesting and worth a look, such as Spellmaster the Saga, one that takes inspiration from the Gothic series, which is a real throwback, where you play as a magic builder in this medieval fantasy world. There is an open world structure where you're free to explore, and while combat is a little jank looking, the exploration portion does seem neat, where your choices do have an effect on the world just like an RPG should. This video is brought to you by Sir Whoopass Immortal Death, a comedic third-person action RPG that released in August this year, being one of the more unique entries and is definitely worth a play. As you can see from the footage, while you are a medieval knight that can wield a giant hammer, somehow you can wear a propeller hat and even a usable jetpack, causing all sorts of chaos and disarray in what is otherwise a utopian world. It is very tongue-in-cheek, with the humour and writing which is difficult to pull off but should get some chuckles out of you, where it's a parody of fantasy tropes but critically is solid in the gameplay department as well. You're searching for the legendary villain-beating artifact, TM, which has been unfortunately split into 3 pieces, having to reunite these in order to defeat a villain known as the Immortal, where the care and attention to detail is impressive, with an old-school flavour to the game as well. Since launch in August, the developers have listened to community feedback and released an update in December, fixing, tweaking and optimizing many of the prior issues, so it's as good a time as any to buy this, so click on the link in the description below. Our first isometric action RPG on the list is Ghost Lore, one that comes to us from my home country of Singapore, and in one of the more unique moves that I have seen, incorporates Southeast Asian mythology and culture into the game. Action RPGs like Diablo do usually take inspiration from European folklore, so this is a very welcomed change of pace due to the variety, and add to that some good art and awesome action and you have a winner, and while it is still in early access, is playable from start to finish. A very pleasant little title is Eternal Itch Plus, one that certainly has Breath of the Wild vibes, but don't go expecting a masterpiece in this, where it's neat but flawed, but is still worth a look. It has you on a quest, attempting to awaken your sleeping wife from eternal slumber, then working together in order to defeat the Skeleton King. It is one of the more adorable looking titles with fun combat and plenty to explore, making it one of the highlights of the year. A game which does border on the AAA space is Outward Definitive Edition, one that refines the earlier release from 2019, adding in both DLCs and quality of life improvements into a pretty decent package. This is a fantasy title that has been compared to Dark Souls and the Gothic series, where it is definitely on the more challenging end of things. It is pretty open and freeform, where the game allows you to explore in any direction, but the world is dangerous and you will end up dead more often than not, since your character is not some legendary hero, but rather just a regular person. There is a lack of a detailed tutorial as well, so it takes a while to get going, but once you do, it seems to be one of the more rewarding experiences out there. The only first-person title on the list is Dread Delusion, and I do apologize if I missed any out, since the RPG tag on Steam is all but useless, where this is an open-world title with, of course, retro visuals that do make it stand out. There is an otherworldly nature to the game as a result, but it's not purely due to the visuals but the designs of the characters and enemies, and has drawn comparisons to Morrowind for obvious reasons. However, it is a lot smaller in scale and is still in early access, but it's a fantastic entry not to be missed. I love my Diablo-style action RPGs, which is why Elaloth Champions of the Four Kingdoms got my attention, one that combines the action of such a title with the more narrative focus of a traditional CRPG. It is an open world for you to explore, travelling to the Four Kingdoms corresponding to the four races of human, elves, orcs and dwarves, where within these are more than 40 houses and clans which you can join, as well as companions to recruit, with a combat system that might take a bit of time to get used to, but should eventually be pretty satisfying. It's another early access title where more is being added, but it's a great first step so far and I cannot wait to see where this ends up.
You finally have arrived. I promise your death will be painful.
Dungeons of Sandaria did recently pop up in a surprise releases video since they released an update that added icy dungeons, but for those of you not familiar, this is a rather old school action RPG that would not be out of place in the early 2000s in terms of the visuals and gameplay. It is, however, not a knock on the game, since it is good and worth experiencing even in modern times, where it has an almost non-existent story and is all about delving into dungeons and battling enemies, being a worthy entry for the year.
You have gone too far, mortal. Your life will come to an end in this chamber.
I don't have too much to add for Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2 being a remastered version of a game from 2004, modernized and made to work on modern PCs and consoles.
You must save Baldur's Gate. Please, hurry.
It is still worth a look, especially since it's quite different in style and design as compared to the modern equivalents like Diablo 3, being quite the curiosity and still holds up today.
Death awaits you.
I wasn't quite sure where to place Lost Epic in these recap videos for Games of the Year, but this is a side-scrolling action platformer RPG from a Japanese developer which is very Japanese indeed. What I mean by this is the numbers and text popping off enemies, as well as the very flashy combo-based combat with epic attacks and abilities, massive bosses, and even the very anime vibe. There is a little bit of a grind to this game in having to get resources for upgrades, but the multiple characters and areas to explore does provide the variety to keep you going. I did come across Runeteller when looking at new releases, but never covered the game on the channel, primarily because it uses that very commonly used asset pack for the characters which I absolutely hate, but it seems to have gotten enough support and attention, so I thought I'll give it a mention here. Similar to some of the other games on this list, this is a third-person action RPG that has you adventuring through an open world, going on quests, recruiting allies, crafting upgrades and exploring the cities. I've chosen this trailer that focuses on the combat, but there's more to this game where not pictured are the segments where you're in town, as well as resource gathering activities like mining and fishing. Somehow, it does have online co-op support as well, so you can play with friends, looking like an ambitious title that I still don't quite know where to place. Perhaps the best game on the list is Estelibra Revision, another game whose publisher did sponsor a video on the channel where it comes to us from a solo Japanese developer who spent something like 15 years on this game. I'm happy that this seems to be doing well for them after all that effort, where, like Lost Epic mentioned earlier, it is very Japanese in terms of presentation. There is a surprisingly deep equipment and upgrade system, but there's plenty to collect and upgrade as you play along. Combat is good, serving as a conduit to the underlying RPG mechanics, but the gigantic bosses are of note and might secretly be a Game of the Year contender as well. I'm pretty selective with sponsors on the channel, which is why I'm proud to have worked with the developer of Gadonia on such an integration, where the third-person open-world RPG is great and not to be missed. Of the games on this list like Runeteller or Spellmaster the Saga mentioned earlier, Gadonia is perhaps the best of the lot, with plenty to do in terms of exploration and combat. There are massive cities to explore and even some extensive systems to build up your home base, and add to that some pretty visuals and you do have a winner. It did release out of early access in October and seems to be primarily the work of one developer, which is very impressive, so I do wonder what's next from him. I have to give a special mention to this early access action survival title as well, since it does remind me of Valheim, having a vague Norse mythology inspired setting, but Frozen Flame isn't quite put together just yet, where it needs to be tweaked and balanced in early access, but is still one to watch. You can watch this video for the best games like Diablo right now.